is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Samaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paulini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you're tuning in from. If you are in the Philippines or Indonesia, I mention those two countries in particular because obviously there were two players that have been in action today on the WTA side, and I've been speaking to a lot of our audience from those two countries. It is extremely early in the morning, so thank you for getting up. But if you're watching this on replay, I do not blame you. In Australia, it's sort of a reasonable-ish time, 9, 10 o'clock. Some people are probably already at their desks, but perhaps they are cheekily tuning into us live whilst their boss is not looking, Brenna.
That could be the case, and we would welcome that.
We welcome it, yeah. We welcome it, too. We definitely. How you doing, all right?
I'm good. February has begun.
Where you are, yeah, indeed. Where you are, of course, it's 4:30 in the afternoon, I believe.
That is correct.
All right. And where I am, it's 10:30 in the evening. Anyway, that is the time check done. Time is a very interesting way to begin this because, of course, Alcaraz has beaten a record in terms of time, in terms of being the quickest to ever achieve the career slam. Meanwhile, Novak Djokovic continues to defy time stroke age and made another Grand Slam final, albeit it was the first time he had lost a Grand Slam final. So there were obviously big questions for both of these two players. I am going to begin with Alcaraz winning the title in Melbourne and just the achievement of just winning the Australian Open for the first time in his career. What are your thoughts on that, Brenna?
Really just impressive. I think about there's two things, right? When you think about the off season, and it's quite short for top players like Alcaraz who do play in the ATP finals. You know, you have about 6 weeks, but then you ultimately don't play a lead-up event. In this case, Carlos and Yannick decided to head over to Asia and play an expedition, which suited them both well. But regardless, coming into Australia, there was probably, two big things circled. The first one being, this is the tournament where Alcaraz hasn't performed yet, hadn't even gotten to a semifinal yet. So that matchup with Zverev was very, let's say there was a magnifying glass over it because one, it was a semifinal. Two, Zverev had defeated him here before. Does Zverev get back to a final, etc.? That's the one. That's the first thing. The second thing I'm thinking about is, how does Carlos manage the emotions of not having Juan Carlos Ferrero in the box? What does that mean for him being in such a big moment, big environment? And, us tennis fans, when you've checked a lot of boxes like Alcaraz has, we're going to put a lot of pressure on you. How do you perform on the stage early in the season, the one place where you haven't got it done yet? And he did it. He did it with flying colors, dropped, I guess, 3 sets in the end when it was all said and done. But a really, really impressive showing from the start of the tournament to the final ball.
Just trying to think who he dropped those 3 sets to. Oh, of course, yeah, 2 to Zverev and 1 to Djokovic. Yeah, I think it's interesting you pinpoint the Zverev match as the sort of beginning of this, because I think most of us obviously just remember the final as it's still fresh in our minds. But yeah, I think you're right. He lost to Zverev, of course, 2 years ago. He is someone who has played Zverev in quick-ish conditions and not always performed. I'm thinking of ATP finals as well. Even French Open day is a little quicker than French Open night. Yeah, I think He's a different player now to what he was 12, 18, 24 months ago. He's still pretty explosive. He's still incredibly quick and athletic, and that should remain for many more years to come, which is obviously not good news for his opponents, if you like. But yeah, I think the Zverev match is interesting because, of course, he was down and out in so many ways in that fifth set, down a break, obviously had been struggling physically earlier on. I was a little concerned as well after the first set. He seemed a little bit flat, a little bit like Jannik and Novak had done at different points in the semi-final of their semi-final. He started a bit flat. He was a few errors. Of course, Novak was playing incredibly as well, which doesn't help. There's also that psychological element, which I know has got to Carlos in the past, coming up against Djokovic. Probably the best example of that would have been the French Open semi-finals. And it was something I considered because I don't think we see Carlos get that nervous despite that outward character that he has. Sometimes that's often associated with nerves, but he's generally controlled his nerves pretty well as someone who's won. I'm now going to say he's won 7 slam finals and lost 1, which is also a stat I hadn't considered until right now, actually, which is also phenomenal. 7-1. You maintain that throughout your career and you're winning, 85% of your slam finals. But I did consider it being a possibility here because of coming up against Djokovic. And there was a lot of noise coming into this final because it was Djokovic on the other side and not Jannik. But then I thought, okay, he's also come on a couple of years now. He also seemed to progress quite well from that French Open semi-final pressure to then go and win Wimbledon sort of 4 weeks later or whatever it was, 5 weeks later. And then finally on that pressure sort of thing, there was a lot more attention on Novak than there was Carlos going into this final.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think like Djokovic's path to get to the final was very, we'll just say unusual, right? And when you don't win a set for 6 days and somehow you're in the semis and you're playing, the best hardcore player in the world, which many docs, and it's a fair statement, is Jannik Sinner. I think it's up for debate at this point, but regardless, he then goes on and plays one of the more dramatic matches. I'd say like you think about Djokovic, he's done it all, but that match on Friday morning, depending on where you were, Friday afternoon against Sinner, it was something different and probably a lot of us didn't expect. And it goes 5 sets, goes 4 hours. And so you're right in terms of, does Djokovic have one more in him? Can he beat the 2 players that he's essentially set himself out to do for these final few years of his career? Still being able to produce at slams, which it didn't look like he was doing, given, going down 2 sets to love against Musetti, a guy who, has always had a chance against him. They've played 10 times, 11 now. Head-to-head is 10-1 in Djokovic's favor. But yeah, I mean, getting over the Sinner situation or the hump, the obstacle, he played a very, very impressive match. I mean, I think it would be a little unfair to not mention the break point count, going 2 of 18. Sinner was Djokovic saving 16 of 18. I can't say the percentage off the top of my head, but it's something like 87. Ridiculous. Doesn't happen often. But yeah, John, go ahead and talk a little bit more about kind of that narrative going into the final, as you mentioned.
I mean, so it was sort of a weird situation that Alcaraz had, it kind of got under the radar, even though we had that crazy match against Zverev, because it got overtaken in terms of narrative and craziness with the Novak thing. What I will say is that there was also a part of me that thought, I don't know what level we're going to get from Novak over 3, 4, 5 sets. If we get what we saw in spells, but not for 5 sets against Jannik, but probably for the 3 sets that he won, sensational level, then we're probably going 5. But then we also know, and I know there was a lot of, and I get it, there was a lot of probably romance in the idea of Novak winning the final in 5. But aside from the physical side, because actually going into the final, I thought Novak looked quite good at the end of his 5-set match with Yannick, obviously winning the 5th set, coming from 2-1 down as well, lest we forget. So he wins the last 2 sets against Yannick. Forehand was firing. That break point stat as well, though, was kind of also a negative for me for Novak going into the final. I mean, I think you were erring in the negative as you highlighted that more than the positive. Of course, it's phenomenal to do so, and it's clutch. And 2/3 of those points he does great on. Yannick probably gives him enough, but Yannick will probably never, maybe never in his career, again have a bad day like that. And Novak did well against Carlos as well. I don't know, but I'm going to say 2 from 8. Carlos might have been, no, it would have been more because I think he broke three times in it. So it might have been 3 from 8, actually. But still, that's not bad. Novak's saving 5 break points and sometimes big moments as well. But that's not sustainable. And nor is the tennis that Novak showed, in my opinion, in the first 3 rounds, although a lot of people disagree, including Novak himself. But I didn't think he was playing well enough in the match against Botic, for example, that was going to take him towards the final or winning the tournament, so much so that I thought he would lose to Mensik. He certainly wasn't playing, and by his own admission, he was going home. He certainly wasn't playing the tennis necessary to go really, really far in this tournament in 2 sets. Musetti. That's a lot of spells, of periods. And he hadn't shown for 2.5 years the kind of tennis that suggested he was going to win the Australian Open. However, he rolled back the years in that semi-final against Yannick Sinner and showed that, me included, a lot of the predictions in terms of that semi-final were wrong, and that I was also wrong to suggest he wouldn't be making the Australian Open final. But that's still not enough. And there's one more thing that there's a lot of people saying, including Jack, for example, he wants this so badly, and that will get you so far, and it will help you win super tight 5-setters, perhaps, especially when fatigue is coming in. But that won't win you a Grand Slam on its own, especially when you've got, well, maybe someone who's going to go on to be in the conversation in the next 5 or 10 years for the greatest of all time. I think it's going to be difficult to say how that's going to go. But he's already in the top 10 best players of all time, I think, in terms of achievements, Carlos Alcaraz. Yeah.
And just talking about raw talent, guys to pick up a racket, he's already up there.
He's already probably ahead of 1 or 2 people that are still. I mean, I'm not sure how many slams Ivan Lendl won, but probably he's one of the sort of workhorses that won a lot of slams. I'm just having a look at Lendl right now. He never won Wimbledon.
17.
No, he wouldn't have won 17.
Yeah.
But Ivan Lendl would have won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. So there you go. Lendl's ahead of him with 8 slams. And yet I think Lendl would, although he's a very confident person, Ivan Lendl, and very sure of himself, so he might disagree with me here. But I think in terms of just raw talent, I think I would probably put Alcaraz ahead of him. And yeah, where is Alcaraz in the all-time list? He's in the top 10, I think, of Grand Slam winners of all time. I'm going to check now.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you've got the big 3. Then
yeah,
after
he's
that,
already,
you've got...
I think McEnroe had 7.
McEnroe won 7. Boris won 6, I'm going to say. Boris Becker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the list here. Here we go. Sorry, yeah. So he's already he's probably just outside the top 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. He's already in joint 14th. Along with, but this is, by the way, a lot of these are pre-Open era. So if we look at Open era only, he's sort of 10-ish. But anyway, it won't be long, by the way. And it, by the way, reminds me of a conversation I had with Jack at Wimbledon 2023, where I said he's winning 10 or more. Jack said no. Nick said no. Our dear late friend Damien said, "What have you been smoking?" He's obviously going to win 10 or more. And I think 60-70% of the talking tennis community were like, yeah, he's going to win 10 or more. I remember Biola was also, I think, suggesting 10 or more as well. But I remember Nick and Jack were like, no. Well, I'm sure Jack in particular, but probably Nick too, have probably switched to the 10 or more camp. But yeah, let's talk about Alcaraz now and the achievement as a whole. I mean, it is phenomenal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And something that came to mind, John, whether this is related to what you wanted to get into, but talk about like, I know you're an avid sports fan, so you can relate to this in a
Mhm.
sense, but I just think Alcaraz, especially when it comes to tennis, it's an individual sport, so it's a bit different, but you need to possess that it factor. And what I mean by that is
Mhm.
like you have the God-given talent, you have the natural ability, you have the determination, the hunger to work hard. But then
Mhm.
it's about being in the spotlight, being on court, 20,000 people watching you, in these tense environments. What can you what comes out in those tough moments, in those high pressure situations? And Alcaraz he's got some different sort of God-given ability where he's able to smile through the pressure, enjoys the
Mhm.
moment. Um, he's really able to be himself out there. But like there's not like separating him from like being humankind, as we talked about a few weeks ago, showing the cramps against Djokovic at the French Open, that first battle. But at this age, with this resume, it's quite impressive. So that's just something that came to mind last night. It's just like possessing that it factor. He's one of those athletes that has it.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to consider how many times would you say he got really tight, he got really nervous, and that's why he lost this tennis match. And there is only one clear-cut version. I'd love someone in the live comments or perhaps retrospectively in the comments below this video or, of course, as a podcast. Maybe there's more. But because obviously I'm thinking about the French Open of 2023, the semi-final against Novak when, yeah, he was fraught with nerves. And yet he still was at one set all, but eventually it caught up with him the whole occasion. That interesting at that time, he'd already won a slam. So I think many of us, including me, had kind of neglected that possibility going into that match. But of course, there was just so much build up to that, arguably more than any match in recent years. Certainly after sort of Nadal and Federer had faded from the light. And so when it comes to pressure, yeah, he's not someone who strikes you as nerveless because that's someone we think of people like Yannick Sinner, for example, very understated, very cool, very calm, very scrupulous or unscrupulous. I always get those two words from but basically, don't show too much emotion. That's what we associate with being cool under pressure. Roger Federer, of course, ticks that box too. Mika Hakkinen, for example, in Formula One, just ice as well, blah blah blah. Especially coming from Scandinavia, people like Edberg and Lendl as well from the tennis world, and so on and so forth. And yet, really, when we look at his losses, they often are, oh, he's just fallen asleep. He's gone for a wander. What's he doing? He's not concentrating. He's messing around. He's losing to David Goffin in the first or second match he played in Miami in 2025. He's losing to Cam Norrie in Paris Bercy inexplicably. Even perhaps you could argue, although he did admit that actually he felt a bit of pressure against Jack Draper at Indian Wells actually in that semi-final loss, but it's not really apparent, if you like. I mean, it was a three-setter. I think it was windy and so on and so forth, and Draper just was playing phenomenally well, and sometimes you can lose tennis matches anyway. So there aren't many occasions. I mean, he's won, as I say, 7 out of 8 Grand Slam finals he's played. He wins big matches more often than not, even against the absolute best, such as Novak Djokovic, such as Yannick Sinner. He now has an even head-to-head with Djokovic, I believe. I think it might be 5-all, which I thought could be an interesting sort of element to this match as well, because it would have been, from Djokovic's perspective, yeah, it's 5-all. If he had finished his career in whatever fashion over the next couple of years, but with a winning head-to-head against Carlos, or even if he went on and played Carlos a couple of times in 2027, 2028, when he was very much a fading force and lost, it would be like, well, we'll draw the line at the Australian Open final of 2026. He won that one, and that was the end of it. We'll also draw the line with Sinner, and even though the Sinner head-to-head would be favourable for Yannick, if Novak had gone on to win the Australian Open, that would be where we draw the line, and that will be our memory that Novak won some of the biggest matches between them, even though I know they played the 2024 Australian Open semi-final and a couple of other slam finals, but semi-finals. So this would have obviously been just about as perfect an ending for Novak as possible. Now, of course, I use the word ending loosely because I don't think if he'd have won, and I still don't think even in defeat, he will be ending it. But this could well have been the last chance for Novak to win a slam. And even if he then has 2 years of just picking up the odd 250 at venues that he enjoys, such as Athens, and you saw how much there, his farewell over the next 2 and a bit years would have been a very slow burning but enjoyable farewell, still on the fumes of an Australian Open win of 2026 that almost came from nowhere.
Yeah,
but it didn't quite happen.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. You're spot on. And that's where I think about, what's been driving him, what's been pushing him in the off season. It's moments like Thursday when he's like, okay, I got one of them in the semis, and if I do it, I'll probably have the other in the final. That being Yannick.
Yeah, Thursday for you. I'm just thinking it was Friday morning for me and Friday.
Well, yes, I'm thinking once he's
sure. Don't worry.
Once he's beaten Musetti and he sees the path ahead. Those are, that's what his off season's about. That's just kind of where I think, because when you've done everything else in the sport, what's there more to play for? Obviously, he loves the sport. He loves the grind, the competition. Maybe not the grind as much anymore, as he doesn't play too many events. But I guess the only other thing that comes to mind is 2028 Olympics. I don't have a clear-cut kind of response for that, but the only thing, I don't think he does either. He did say this might be my last time playing in Australia.
Serbian,
yeah, I'll be back.
He said, I don't know if I'll be back in what capacity. Exactly. I'll be back, but I don't know if it'll be on the court. But if you remember, he waved goodbye in 2025 after his semi-final of retirement versus Zverev. Similar sort of feelings there. Also, maybe 1 or 2 post-match comments as well, which Novak might think we are then writing him off, as well. But he does say things, and we look at the clock, and we know that he's a competitor, and we know that he's a winner, and we don't know. But we're of course going to say, well, he says he would like to finish in 2028, but he also said he didn't know if he'd be back in Australia. He's also a serial, just the biggest serial winner the sport has ever seen. Is he going to be okay with not making Grand Slam finals? Well, now he has. So, I think he should pretty much safely go through to. I've always thought he'll go through to Wimbledon at the very least of 2026. So that's 5 months from now. I think maybe this run suggests actually we could even go through to Wimbledon. I'm almost putting the clock as far ahead as Wimbledon 2027, because I think if he's getting to the semi-finals, let's say, of one more slam this year, and I think that's a very good chance that he does that, because there is a gap between maybe him and Carlos and Yannick on a regular basis, albeit he beat Yannick. But there's also another gap between him and the rest, pretty much, as we've also seen over the last 12 to 24 months. That I don't see that gap has closed at all in the first slam of this year. So if anything, it might even have widened. So absolutely, he'll almost certainly be in a similar scenario come Wimbledon of this year. I actually see him possibly retiring at Wimbledon 27 now, because then it might be like, he's then going out 3rd rounds, 4th rounds and stuff. And does he then want to go on another 13, 14 months, maybe with a losing record over that sort of 13, 14 month period? In other words, losing more matches than winning. And that might be tricky for him.
Right. I think that's a fair analysis, because I'm with you. It's, the gap might have even widened for me. The only player I would think is like, does he see an Alex De Minaur, in the quarterfinals? And I don't even know if that works out draw wise, but there's just not many players that I can think of that would trouble him, right? I mean, in a best of 5 format at these slams where it just means more and the lights are brighter, he has shown us over the last, like you said, 18 months, like the guy can get to the semifinals. And from there, it's about what type of tennis he displays. And we haven't really gotten into his tennis, but we did say, like, we're both in agreement that I don't see why he doesn't play, a full season here, or at least, like you said, I think Wimbledon 2027 is a fair kind of assessment and achievement for him. Quick note on the tennis. I mean, obviously we saw it in the semifinal versus Sinner, serving really well, still the spot, like one of the best spot servers. And then he comes out in the final and plays a 10 out of 10 first set. And I think we're all kind of sitting in our seats like, okay, like pressure back on Carlos. Like, can he raise the level? Few break points. The second set's slipped out of Novak's hands. We're back to a best of 3. Only about, I think it was 65, 70 minutes in. So we were only 70 minutes in and we're playing a best of 3, which is quite interesting. And felt like Carlos got his level back. And then I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be easy. You know, Carlos is going to breeze through this match, but then an extremely gutsy hold that takes 12 minutes from Djokovic, saving 6 break points. He gets a second, maybe even a third win. The crowd's into it. Pressure back on Carlos. And ultimately, as I tell everyone, and, you know, they're all like, Brenner, you know, you're right. Carlos is going to win. Yeah, I thought Carlos was going to win, but let's not forget that 4th set, for all 30-40, like the most important break point of the match. And I thought, you know, Djokovic just played, I guess, probably one of the worst points that he had played that set. If you look at the entirety, and it's
funny because it was the forehand, wasn't it?
It was the forehand. It was a loose forehand
for the previous couple of days.
Exactly. So there's no reason why that couldn't have been an epic 5-setter, and who knows from there. So, like I said, yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. The guy can play another year and go very deep in the slams.
Yeah, just got this poll up in its infancy. So far, it is everyone voting that he won't win another slam. I think if I was voting, I would do the same, but I would have also voted that way a week or so ago and nearly proven wrong on that. Yeah, but listen, if I don't think nobody can tell how their body's going to be in 2.5 years from now, but he has often referenced that Olympics in 2028. And I think that's a great idea for him to sort of just keep that as an objective. And if I would love to know, actually, and I don't think I've heard him ask this question, and he might take umbrage with it, and maybe there's 4 journalists who are a bit scared to ask him this question, but I wouldn't mean any offense by it, but I would just say, look, you often reference the 2028 Olympics as a moment to go out. I completely understand that. But considering 2 things, one, if you're not competitive in the 12 months, 18 months, 2 years prior to that, and then throw in the fact that you've achieved absolutely everything in the sport, including that Olympic gold medal that had eluded you for basically 2 decades. Because I think if he hadn't done that, I can understand him still just giving it one more shot, especially best of 3 on a hard court. But given those 2 factors, would you still be interested in playing the Olympics if, for example, you didn't win a tournament for 2 years and you weren't making second weeks of slams? Would you still say, you know what, I'm going to keep going for the next 6 to 12 months or whatever it would be to go to the Olympics? And I think he might not know that answer because he might not know quite how that feels. And also there's so many levels there, isn't there? What do you mean by I'm not competitive? You mean I don't get past the first round of every slam I play for 18 months? Do you mean I don't win a tournament, or I'm getting to quarters every time, but I lose in a 5th set tie break? Or so there is that. But we also know, I know what not being competitive means. And I think Novak does probably better than anyone the sport has also ever seen. So yeah, I'd like to know the answer to that question, because then I think we would be able to say with more confidence whether he would make that Olympics in 28.
Yeah, no, it'd definitely be an interesting question to ask him. So
but I think people are a little bit afraid because I think it was clumsily worded, perhaps, but I don't think the guy meant it with any malice when he said, "What's it like?" Because you've been the pursuer of of Roger and Rafa, and for 18 years in terms of the slam count, he was until he goes past Rafa at the French Open of 2023. There is a different way, of course, now that he's pursuing these guys because they've overtaken him. I kind of know what he means. I don't quite know what the motivation for the question was, but I sort of know what he means, because it's funny that for someone who is the greatest of all time in every single metric possible, it has always felt like he's chasing someone or something. Perhaps it's records right now, but I know what that was. But then I think he did his next press conference, not quite behind closed doors, but certainly not everyone seemed to be invited to his semi-final press conference. That may also be the hour, but to be honest with you, they still do them. They still do them in the same room. But that press conference he did in the semi-final, and he did say basically he was annoyed about. That's what he said. He used journalists and experts, his words, to fuel the fire that helped him win the match against Yannick Sinner. But actually, I don't know a single expert journalist who's actually written him off. Like even me, I might have thought he loses to Yannick Sinner in the semi-finals, but I've never said he's done. I might vote in this poll. No, I don't think he is. But that's just me saying he's not playing as well as he was in 2023 or 2021. And I think Novak would say the same, wouldn't he? I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, John, because no, I'm not writing him off. I see him as the third best player at each slam. So that's how I take it. And the journalist comment was definitely an interesting one. It definitely caught fire in the media world. But I'm with you. I totally understood kind of the question, maybe not the motive for the question, but I thought it was like, yeah, it was a fair assessment. It was definitely an interesting angle for a guy who holds 24 majors. And yeah, it's fair. It's like, it's not like Djokovic is going to be listening to us. And if he is, then maybe he can answer your question about the Olympics.
Yeah, that's the question. And I'm, it's with the utmost respect. It's because he is the greatest player of all time that becomes a relevant question. It's not a relevant question for Cam Norrie. Sorry, Cam. But it's not a relevant question for Liam Brody. Sorry, Liam. It's not like we're going, Liam, listen, if you don't win a slam for 2 years between 2026 and 2028, are you therefore not going to do the singles of the Olympics at 2028 because it's just going to be too much and you're not going to win that, probably not going to win that gold. It's not a question for these guys. It's not even a question for Zverev or Rublev or Casper Ruud or anyone really. Even players, for example, and it's not really a question for Dimitrov even. So really, if we hone in on players of his age or age group, people in their sort of early, mid or late 30s, it's not even a question for these guys. It's not a question that Gael Monfils or Stan Wawrinka, would you change your mind, if you don't win a slam over the next 12? Well, of course, yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah. So it's only a question for Novak because of who he is. And it's because of how special he is. It's a question.
Right. It's out of respect. It's out of respect.
Yes. All right. Anyway, Novak, feel free to get in the comments below and let me know. All right. We've done a lot on Novak and Carlos. There is one final thing that is really also a part of this opening. And by the way, don't worry. I do think we will race through some of the other key competitors at the AO, but I just think that there's so many narratives regarding Novak and Carlos that it's impossible to ignore them. And the final one which is in the title, is this idea of a calendar slam. And I think I remember Matthew de Souza, a regular in the comment sections and the chats that we have, talking about this last year with Yannick Sinner. And when Novak was at the peak of his powers until probably the beginning of 2024, it was certainly a question with him each year. And with Novak, the question gathered pace if he won the Australian Open. With Rafa, it would all kind of begin with the Australian Open, but probably would never have really become a real question unless he was in the Wimbledon final or won Wimbledon on the back of winning the first 2 slams. But you know what I mean? It's winning the slam that you're least successful at, and then it's like, okay, that's what Carlos has just done. He's been in the slam finals of every Grand Slam. I'm going to go back to he wasn't in the Aussie Open 25, so he's been in the last 4 in a row, hasn't he? And if you go back beyond that, he was in the slam finals 3 out of the 4, I think, in 2024 as well. Yes, he was. Yeah, he was in he's in 2 out of the 4. But you know what I mean? Yeah. He's just a phenomenally good player that I don't think it's a crazy question to just say, I think, okay, here's what I'm saying. I think he and Yannick Sinner have an excellent chance of winning a calendar slam at some point in their career. Now, what does excellent chance mean? I'm going to say 50-50 that Carlos does it at some point in his career. I'm saying it's 50-50 that Yannick does it at some point in his career.
I'm with you. Carlos, like, going into the French, like, I think it's more, once again, like, you passed the first test, and now we're moving on to the final three, and we do have quite a while to wait until we get to the clay. But I think it's for Carlos, it's about, like, just managing the schedule, managing the body. I always find it always hard for a player like him when you have Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Madrid. He always ends up having to withdraw from one of the events, because you want to go into Roland Garros healthy, feeling good. So there, I'd give a slight edge. I might even get to that 53-47 to Carlos at the French Open.
Yeah, right now, yeah.
But it's like, who's to say? Because Yannick is going to pile on, we'll call it 4 or 5 titles. He's probably going to be the same guy. He actually didn't play ever from February till
this tournament.
Rome.
Really, this time last year.
Yeah. So it's
I think for Carlos, I think it's he was asked the question. I really liked his honesty, and he has always been frank in press conferences, including to me on some occasion with certain questions, which I really appreciate. But when he was asked before the tournament, it's like, would you rather win 3 Grand Slams this year or the Australian Open? Now, the professional answer, which most players would give, would be, oh, of course, I'll go for the 3 slams. But he's like, I don't know. I can't answer that, because he was clearly really, really keen to do the career slam, and probably even more so because he would then be the youngest ever to do it.
Yeah. So, John, I ask you, does that ease tension for a 23-year-old who has now completed the career?
I think it does, until he starts walking that tightrope. If he wins the first 2, or especially if he wins Wimbledon, then he's got to walk that tightrope that even Novak was never able to negotiate, especially in 2021 with that pressure in the final against Medvedev, which we've seen him play Medvedev a lot of times now, and he generally has the better of him in not every match that they played, but most of the big matches as well in slam finals. But he just couldn't. We saw Novak punching his legs that day because he just couldn't. He was so anxious, he couldn't get his legs going in that final against Medvedev when he was walking the calendar slam tightrope. He also had the other issue himself that year, Novak, of course, of playing the Olympics, and I know 1 or 2 people, including Steve Flink, think that pursuit of the Olympic gold medal, that he lost the semi-final match to Zverev in, and that effort of going to Japan as well, and then going on to New York, and the energy that took it out of him there, that didn't help his pursuit of the calendar slam that year. Now, Carlos doesn't have that, but I think that clay season is so energy sapping when you play all of those tournaments. But as you say, each of the last few years, there's been one. He missed. He intentionally skipped Rome 22, I think it was. When does he lose to Marajan? Was that 23?
23, the year 23. I was there, yeah.
So anyway, he intentionally skipped 2022. It was an interesting decision, mature decision in some ways. But it also tells you how congested the calendar is throughout the year, in my opinion, but especially around then, that someone's skipping a 1,000, and arguably one of the most historical or prestigious on the tour, maybe even the most in some ways in terms of its history, Row. And yeah, I think it would be wise for him again. And of course, we mentioned the injury that ruled him out of Madrid in 2025. It also hampered him in 2024, that I think then meant he didn't play Rome in 24 because of that injury he picked up in Madrid, I think.
Yep.
So he also obviously got injured in Barcelona this year in the final, skips Madrid as a result, plays Rome, wins the French Open. I think it would be ideal if he doesn't play one of those clay court tournaments that I've touched upon, from Monte Carlo all the way through to the French Open. I think he obviously won't play that week before. I think Novak will probably do what he does most years, which is play Geneva and then do the French Open. That seems to be an ideal build-up for him, and probably not play anything. Maybe play Rome. Play Rome, Geneva, and that's it. But for Carlos, the problem Carlos has is that 2 of the 4 are in Spain.
Exactly.
And I think one of those 2 would be the more ideal. Probably say Barcelona would be the ideal one to skip because it's 500. It comes after Monte Carlo, which is obviously a very intensive week. And it's probably a tournament where he's going to go deep semis or final again. And then you wouldn't play the next week. But can he do that? Can he skip Madrid? Can he skip Monte Carlo? I don't know. But I think he will probably miss one of those four somehow. Whether it's just incredible fatigue, if he does go on a run winning Monte Carlo, Barcelona, and Madrid, say, and then he's like, I am absolutely gassed, and he takes the mature decision to skip Rome, but he'll probably have to come up with an injury of some sort. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
he's won all these tournaments now, so it's okay. He doesn't need to pursue them. He doesn't need to show how proud he is to represent Spain and play in Spain, because he's done that dozens of times in the past. So yeah, I think he would sensibly miss, because it's just so grueling. And then I'm also thinking about Wimbledon and especially New York as well later on down the road.
Yeah. I mean, I'll conclude with like this part of the clay season calendar is like he's actually had problems twice now, and both have resulted in Roland Garros titles. With the forearm when he had to skip Monte Carlo, and he might have even did he skip Barcelona too? But then obviously last year
he won Barcelona in 22. He won Barcelona in 23. 25 he gets to the final, but he's injured. 24 I don't remember what he did there in 24.
Right. But despite our worrisome expectations, he's found a way. But yeah, I'm with you. I always it's hard because all those tournaments are so important, and I love them all, but you just can't play them all. You just physically cannot do it, especially when you do win Monte Carlo and you play 4 matches from Wednesday to Sunday because it's a 1-week Masters event. So
The other final thing on this is good luck Canada trying to get Alcaraz. If he's going for the Korean Slam in particular. If he skipped bits or he's got injured or he goes out early in a few tournaments during the summer, sure, may well he does play Canada. But I remember the Canadian tournament director last year saying, yep, him and Yannick have told me they're definitely playing next year, and it's because of the Olympics in 24 or whatever in 25. Nah, I'm sorry. It's not your fault, Canada, that the ATP have done this to you, but that's how it is. How old was Djokovic when he won his 7th slam? I'm going to try and do the quick maths. He achieved his 7th slam so he won 2008 in Australia. He then wins 2000, and he must have won a slam in 2010. No, he didn't. He then wins 3 slams in 2011. So he's now on 4. In 2012, he wins another one in Australia. 2013, he wins 1 slam. So he's on 6 then. And I think his 7th would have come at Wimbledon in 2014. That's if I've done my maths right. He won his 7th in 2014, which would have made him 14 plus 13, 27. Yeah, 14 plus 13 is 27. So it'd have been 27. So he's 4 years older than what Carlos is now in terms of the 7 slams. But yeah, that is that. All right, listen, we've done a lot. That was just a question in the live chat I wanted to answer. We've done a lot on these 2 guys, and we'll just have to watch this space. Let's sift through 1 or 2 of the other players. Yannick Sinner. Disappointment, right? I guess. Anything other than winning the Australian Open would have been a disappointment, but to not make the final as well, right?
Totally. I mean, once again, I thought we were going to get the same storyline as Wimbledon 2025 when, he's playing a player that he, is looking down and out against. And in the Wimbledon case, it was Grigor Dimitrov down 2 sets to love. With Dimitrov couldn't skip a beat, and Sinner was struggling to find ways to get back into the match.
You referring to the Spitzeri match in Australia, right?
I am referring to the Spitzeri match in Australia. Can barely walk, can barely, really stay in a point. And the heat rule goes into effect, and he finds a way. And he wasn't by any means 100% after the roof closed and he had a little break, but he found a way to get through it. Got himself together, a nice win over Darderi, and it was looking kind of back on track. But he went up against a well-rested and hungry Djokovic.
Indeed. I think the only thing really regarding Yannick is I think the tennis is clearly still very much there in so many ways. And it was for a couple of sets against Novak, but that's obviously not enough. But I think there is this still long enduring concern about his longevity and endurance in a match over 5 sets that goes beyond, I think, 3 hours and 40 minutes is something like. Basically, he's never won a match, I think, that went beyond that. It's certainly beyond 4 hours he's not won a match. His record in 5 setters, when we compare it to Carlos's almost perfect record, is, I think, about 1 win, 2 losses, something like that. I think he's certainly got a negative record in 5 setters, which is also, for someone at his talents, and if you're the best player in the world, or one of the best 2, I should say, but you have on for various stretches over the last 2 or so years been the best player in the world, you should be winning. So as much as we admire Carlos's record over 5 sets, and I'm sure Rafa's and Novak's are pretty impressive, and Rogers too, you should be winning 75% of them just because you're better. So even if it is a 1-set shootout over the course of several years, if you're not the best player in the world, if you are Sumit Nagal, then I get it. Maybe you've got a negative record in your 5 setters. Maybe you haven't, Sumit. I don't know. I'm sorry. But if you are Yannick Sinner and you have a negative record, it is a standout point.
Yeah, that is a good point. And I think one of those losses coming to Alcaraz at Wimbledon 22 when they were young.
To some of his 5-set losses, Sinner's had a 5-set loss to Novak at the Wimbledon 22. He was up 2 sets to love that day. He lost to Fran Cerundolo at the French Open in 2023 over 5 sets. He's now lost to Novak again in Australia over 5 sets. He obviously lost to Carlos twice at least, US Open when he had a match point in 2022. And then, of course, 2025 when he had more match points at the French Open final. Zverev in 23 US Open as well, 5-set loss. There's a lot. A lot.
There is. And I think there was another special number that I saw going around. Maybe it's like 3 hours, 30 minutes or something.
I think it's 3 hours 40. He's never won a match over.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fair for us to have these concerns, I think. But it's all about like how many of these situations is he putting himself in? I guess we can rattle off a good amount over the last, I don't know, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. But you think about the last 9 slams, it's him 4, Alcaraz 5. He's just continuing to find himself getting back here. So I think it's a fair conversation, though. I don't know what more to say in that sense. It's like, why are these problems happening? Why is he still cramping? If it happened in Shanghai and the humidity, like, I get it. I do get it. But as a in an individual sport, like you're gonna be faced with these conditions, difficult opponents that'll grind you down too. So, can you find the root cause?
I mean, I think it's still probably more physical than mental, but I know Jack is of the opinion that mental doesn't help, and I think it does help and hinder you. The experience of winning a lot of 5-setters and losing a lot of 5-setters. I certainly think Carlos feels like there's still a very good chance he's winning the match, even when Zverev is serving for it, especially with Zverev's reputation. And I think conversely, I think Yannick maybe does feel like, I didn't really want to go here because I know that I don't do well in 5-setters, especially against top 50 opponents, as is shown on the screen right now, with a 2-10 record, 2 wins, 10 losses over 5 sets against top 50. I remember he won a 5-setter against Fucsovics at the Australian Open of 2023. I remember watching that with Mario and Damien here in Bonn. But again, obviously, Fucsovics would have probably almost certainly been outside the top 50 that day. So yeah, that is a concern. All right, I'm sure he'll be fine though, and he's going to win many more slams. And also, even this year, I'd be shocked if he doesn't win at least one of the slams this year, and maybe even two or more. Alexander Zverev. There's two sides to this coin with Zverev. One is to be positive, is to say actually that's the best tennis he has played up until the 5-3 in the fifth set or whenever it was he was serving for it. That is the best tennis over a period of 1 or 2 weeks, and even in one match as he did against Carlos, that we've seen from him in a year, maybe even more. I'm thinking of the Aussie Open last year when he made the final, but perhaps we could go back even further. Just bearing in mind what happened post Australia, the golden swing, that was a disaster. Sunshine double, not great. Clay was not great for him as well, and so on and so forth. And so we know how his 2025 was after Australia, and just Munich title aside was just a very underwhelming year for the guy who's the third best player in the world, at least in terms of points achieved come the end of the year. Hi, Peter, by the way. Good to see you in the chat. So yeah, that's the positive. The negative, of course, is same old, right?
Yeah.
In terms of
pressure. Yeah. I mean, a top 5 player that gets himself in the right positions pretty much year in, year out, outside of a head-to-head against Taylor Fritz, which he didn't have to see this year. I'm sure he was happy about that. But yeah, there is two sides to the coin, and I think that's we've talked about it so much where it's not about beating a dead horse at this point. It's just understanding that, like, can he find a way to get over that hump if he gets himself in the right position, in this case, he got himself to a semifinal versus Alcaraz in a place where he probably has more confidence compared to some other places in terms of surfaces, and obviously head to head against Carlos, now only trails 6-7. So it's an interesting discussion. I think, like, I have a little bit more of high hopes for this season, but that's easy to say given what we saw last year. And there's really no difference if you do the math between this year and last year. Like, he made the final, actually, obviously via a walk or a retirement from Djokovic, but he was here this time last year. So he is not going to go take the golden swing, though. I do know that. So that'll be a different February for him.
Yeah. Listen, I think we kind of sort of, we are. There is positives there. And maybe if he'd have been in that final, he would have beaten Novak. But the thing is, you still don't trust him in the biggest moments, unless he's up 2-0 and a double break. Because we've seen him up 2-0, and he didn't win the Grand Slam final. We've seen him up 2-1, not win a Grand Slam final. We've seen him up a break, serving for it in a fifth set, having been 2 sets down in a semi-final, and he's still not won. Where do I go? I mean, that's just the bare facts. But then you watch the tennis as well. We've seen him, 3 or 4 years ago, just in terms of the second serve, just not being a thing. Well, we've pretty much got over that now, but we've still watching him so passive. And you just know that Alcaraz was feeding off that in that semi-final as well. Alcaraz is feeling better. If he's playing Novak, even if Zverev plays the exact same tennis, even if Novak plays the exact, I think probably Novak wins that because it's Novak Djokovic, and you're not that optimistic if you're Carlos. So you play tennis differently. You play tennis a bit more aggressively because you think he's not going to give you a chance. But with Zverev, he is, because as well as Alcaraz did in that fifth set, I still think it's more Zverev lost it because I think that Alcaraz in that fifth set still wasn't at his best as well. I saw him making lots of errors on break points in particular, and until he finally did break, because he had chances before that. But anyway, there is obviously the positive in that he is now back there at the third or fourth best player in the world. Now, you might say he never left that because of the points suggested, but I'm telling you, post Australia last year, he was anywhere between 5th and 25th in the world in terms of how he performed at each tournament. He certainly wasn't the third best player in the world across the Golden Swing or the Sunshine Double, or at Wimbledon where he went out first round. So, yeah, the pursuit of a slam still exists. It's still a realistic conversation. At least that's the thing, because I think if he goes out early here, we're almost going, I can't even have this conversation again until he does back-to-back good runs at slams. Whereas now he's just caught it in time, if you like, to still make him a relevant question at slams.
Yeah. I mean, we keep having kind of like this almost conversation with Zverev. Think about Vienna against Sinner. Like he was almost there. And it's almost like we're talking about it like we're surprised that he has a chance in putting himself in these positions. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Top 5 player. There's no argument there. I think he'll have a far better calendar year, success-wise, probably raise a few more titles. But yeah, it's all about kind of what tennis he does display in the bigger moments. And yes, I guess the positive we can take away from this is he was a lot more confident in the forehand under pressure. But
yeah, true. All right, just thinking now some of the people that sort of made it to the quarters but not beyond. Who could I pick out as being a worthy person to mention in terms of our conversations? Who springs to mind for you? I'm looking at Ben Shelton. Yeah, let's have a quick word on him.
Sure.
I think the nature of the loss to Yannick changes the narrative a little bit. Again, it's a bit like Zverev in a way. Zverev has ticked a box because he's still very much in the conversation. Whereas I think if he didn't have such a good tournament, we would be like, yeah, I don't want to talk about Zverev as being a Grand Slam potential winner, at least until he shows something else. Whereas I think we can still have that conversation. And I think there's still an argument to say Zverev will win a Grand Slam, even if I personally would say it's less than 50-50 chance. Shelton, similarly, in that I think what we saw post-US Open after that really unfortunate injury he picked up at the worst possible time in terms of it being at the US Open, his home slam. And then what I saw from him in the weeks that followed, because he was obviously injured, then he comes back for the indoor season, but he doesn't do himself justice, in my opinion. Then he loses in a tournament pre-Australian Open, and I'm thinking, still not seeing enough for me to be super confident in Ben. And then he's got Humbert in the first round, and you're going, oh my goodness me. And who do you have in the third round? He had Casper Ruud maybe in the fourth, but who do you have in the third? He had a really tricky third round as well, I think. It was only the second round. Who do you have in the third round? Vachereau, exactly. Yeah. So the straight sets wins over Humbert and Vachereau, and a 4-set win and a performance against Ruud that made me think he was going to be super competitive against Sinner, and yet he wasn't.
Yeah, I thought you were a little bit. I mean, no, it's hard. It's hard to. Yeah, I thought you were a little bit too high on Shelton in this sense, but I think, and I mean this, I think the organizers did not help him out, and that's because the match is played at night, a lot slower conditions, not getting as much out of your serve, and like Shelton,
him to play Yannick in the day would have been better,
And so like it's not fair. It's what I'm saying is I agree with you because his form so much better than we had seen. You know, obviously the tough shoulder injury at U.S. Open, and we didn't really know what we were getting after that, and he just he did want to play in that ATP finals, so I think that was like a motivation for him to get healthy. But now he had an off season. He got a lead up event in Auckland, and feeling a lot better and playing really good tennis. But yeah, those night conditions, man, I thought that was not a nice thing to do by the tournament. If you're a Sinner fan, it was perfect. So I think that hurt him a lot, and he harped on it himself. But it is important against Jannik Sinner. When you do get a chance to return, I'm talking second serve return, like you just have to do a lot better with it. You have to have a little bit more direction and like at least like a game plan in mind, because you can't just put it back in play or death can win against some players, but when you're playing him, Sinner, that is you have to be a lot more measured, and maybe that means more aggressive, but yeah. It was kind of a tough showing for Ben. And I don't know. I hope this doesn't like make him feel much different, because he is such a guy who rides on confidence. And, he's still a young guy. He's not far off. But
He's
it
not
does
far off.
feel
His
it
face
does
there
feel.
doesn't look great, does it, in terms of far?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not right. But yeah, he's not far. He's somewhere between the 3rd and 10th best player in the world, depending on the day that Novak has, Zverev has, Ben has at the office. You know, it depends on what day these guys are having. De Minaur as well, probably as well, and a few others that are obviously there. Lorenzo Musetti definitely in that conversation too now. It just depends on the day that they have at the office. Depends on whether they finish 3rd or 10th in the, or it just depends on whether they make the semis or they go out 3rd or 4th round at the slam. Just depends on who they come up against and what goes on. But of course, Ben in particular, I think, has higher ambitions for that. So he would have liked to have had a loss like he had. If he's going to have a loss, it doesn't like is the wrong word, but he had no shame in that 4th round loss to Carlos last year on a surface where it's his weakest surface, possibly Carlos's best, certainly one that Carlos grew up on. It's the slam where Carlos, has now won twice. Ben has not got past the 4th round and might never have a big run there, but he lost in 4 sets and it was super competitive. If he had a loss like that to Jannik in Jannik's best slam so far, then maybe that would have been slightly different for him. But yeah, he's just not laying a glove on these guys yet. But I still think it's fine. I still think that if he has a healthy 8 months, and I'm still believing, and people will say, John, same results and all that Einstein theory of expecting different results. Sorry, after seeing the same evidence. But I think there's kind of always a reason. So we didn't see him obviously pursue the US Open in the way we wanted him to. I still think this slam might have just been a little bit too soon for him in terms of being super competitive. He's also 1 or 2 years behind Jannik in particular anyway, in terms of his tennis growth. They are similar in age, but I think Ben was on the tour 1 or 2 years after Jannik. And so if we think about where Jannik was in 2023, well, we've seen what's gone there. And I also see the return. I see that return. And I didn't see that with Carlos and Jannik to that negative effect. But he's as good a mover. He's as athletic, possibly, even more so than maybe even Jannik. Quicker, bigger serve, albeit doesn't hit the spots in the same way that Jannik and Carlos do. But there's time for that. He could easily make a slam final on his serve alone if he gets that right. His volleys have got better, but his returns haven't. And until the return gets better, he won't probably make a slam final unless he's pretty lucky. But there's years and years ahead of him. And I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if he doesn't win a Grand Slam. So if you say him or Zverev, well, for me, it's him every day because of where he's at in his career.
I'd agree with that. I mean, the guy is a game changer and he's a playmaker. And those are qualities that I think you need to possess if you want to have a chance against Jannik and Carlos. And so I like that. And I think that's a totally fair Zverev take. I mean, you look at like the tennis wise, it's close, but yes, potential, age, I would actually agree with you in that sense.
Lorenzo Musetti. How do we feel for him? I mean, again, his body. There's a bit like the other two guys, but I think we can be more positive and bigger on Musetti than Ben and Zverev. But there are positives and negatives, as in like, it's his body again. But at least this time, it's his body again, but he's playing the best tennis of his career, and it's better than everyone except for Jannik and Carlos. So he's not really been there before. He's had his body breaking down on him as he's about to lose a 5-setter to Novak. He's had his body breaking down on him in a semi-final that we still think he would have lost one way or another to Carlos last year. We had his body breaking down on him in Monte Carlo final to Carlos as well, in a match that we still think he probably would have lost one way or another, but maybe with a bit more dignity, if you like. And yet now he's had his body breaking down on him when he would have made the semis, having beaten Novak Djokovic en route, and may have given what we saw from Jannik in the semis, may have given Jannik a run for his money. And that would have just been and he's also, by the way, I think, reached number 3. So he's actually usurped Zverev, I think, from number 3 in the world, hasn't he? I'm going to check. ATP live rankings. He might not have done, but I'm going to check.
I know. I think that was a big conversation.
He's number 5.
If he had won,
right
he would have been 3. Yeah.
He's number 5. Number 5, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I think that's true. But yes, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, I think back to maybe like U.S. Open against against Sinner. Like there was just, there's never really an inroad for him. And yeah, I thought a match with Sinner this past week, it would have been a little bit of a different story. I think like the progression on hard courts is like super
Really
impressive. That's like
Serve
the
especially.
Yep, the serve, the forehand, just being a little bit more aggressive.
Backhand wasn't an issue in Australia, at least not until we saw him go out.
And you kind of do the math there. It's what happened after U.S. Open. He had a solid Asian swing, and he had that tough 250 final loss to, was it Bublik again? During the Asian swing, who did he play in that final? I'm blanking.
Oh no, he lost to Billow, didn't he? He lost to Billow.
Yes, it was to Billow. Yeah, who went on a little hard court streak himself, and then a great start to the season. Bublik was on fire in Hong Kong, but once again, like he's just doing all the right things, the hard court progression, what we kind of harp on most about. And actually very interesting sentiment, John, is this time last year, or a week from now last year, he had played his first match in Buenos Aires, and then he had a calf injury, which kept him out.
I saw him in Rio. I saw him. He got there.
He did show up.
Him.
I
saw him in that, like, when in the mix, or near the mix zone, I should say. So he arrived, thought he had a chance of playing, but then pulled out before his first match.
Right.
Which I think his withdrawal might well have been the one that tipped Jaime Fabio into the draw, because he lost to Juan Manuel Cerúndolo. So I think it might have been the one. If it wasn't, it was one of the one or two that pulled out on the eve of the tournament that helped him get in as a lucky loser, and obviously made the quarters, I think, in the end.
Yeah. But ultimately, from a tennis perspective, I think we're both on the same page. I mean, the guy is just so difficult to beat with his variety. His tennis IQ, I think, is probably up there in the top 3, if not number 2. And obviously, he is such a physical player. So, like, this is totally a fair conversation for us to be having. He plays a lot of tennis on the calendar. It's obviously like a different story. Even, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but like even the back concerns during the exhibition, before the Australian Open even started, he was playing a tiebreak with Zverev and said, "Yeah, I'm good. I'll just sit out." But that never flared up, right? We're talking about a groin injury. So, a guy who's still super young, super fit. So this is just unfortunate, It's just
you say we're on the same page, but actually, I have to confess that I had my doubts about him in 2026. I had a show with Steve Flink on the eve of the year, and we all had Carlos and Yannick at 1 or 2, and we Novak was there or thereabouts. It was just a case of, does he stay top 5? Do we put Zverev as high as 3 or 4? Do we have him drop down the rankings? Then there's people that, Ben Shelton's going to be in the top 10, but we don't know where. Taylor Fritz should be in the top 10, but don't know where. But actually, then there's 4, 5. Actually, there's 5 or 10 players. Do you have Rublev re-enter in the top 10? Do you have Medvedev re-enter in the top 10? And do you have Musetti staying in the top 10? Do you have Ruud in the top 10? Who do you have making the? These. Then it's a chaos, and you could choose any one of 10 or 15 players, and there's a case for and against. And I thought Musetti, I had 2 question marks. One was physical question marks, and 2 was the backhand, one-handed backhand at times, especially on quicker surfaces and non-clay. I even think he's overachieved with the Wimbledon semi-final, and yet I think I underestimated him on a hard court, and I underestimated the run he had in Athens that probably showed some good stuff, and I underestimated the performances he showed at the ATP Tour finals with that memorable win over De Minaur, and I think I underestimated the improvements that he made over the previous 6 months, because I think what he showed in that run to the quarterfinals, that he basically got to the semi-finals, didn't he, in Australia, which would have been a phenomenal achievement for him. I think he showed that he's improved enough to comfortably inside the top 10 come the end of 2026. Now, he might not be, because he might have loads of injury issues and he might barely play over the next 6 to 12 months. This might be one of 2 or 3 problems. But the tennis he showed, oh my goodness me, the tennis he showed until the quarterfinals, and including in the quarterfinal, It's top 5 tennis in the world.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. That is totally fair. Because maybe he has overperformed, But I feel like it's the same story when Musetti and Djokovic play each other. Same story. It might be a stretch, but there's always that hunch that I think, Musetti can drag the match along and find his ways. Going into this one, I felt a lot more confident. I was like, this is his chance. And obviously an unfortunate circumstance, but you're right. The level he showed, it's been awesome. Even dating back to, like you said, the Athens week, to the ATP finals week, to Hong Kong, and now we're here. So we got to hope he gets healthy.
Yep, indeed. What time is it now? Okay, let's do one, maybe more quarterfinalist, and then give this a wrap. Let's just see if there's anyone else that I really think deserves a mention from the quarterfinals. We've had Ben Shelton, we've had Lorenzo Musetti.
There's only two more that we could talk about.
Yes, sure. So De Minaur. I don't think there's anything to say about De Minaur, really.
Yeah.
It's like fantastic tennis player, absolutely maximizing every single sinew and drip of sweat he possibly can, and yet it's still probably not enough to beat Alcaraz and Sinner in particular. Now, I know you might say that about Shelton, but at least he's got to win against Jannik Sinner. We've seen Shelton do damage against Carlos, at least for a set or two. We still see him at 20 as well. And we see loads of areas of progression, like the return, like the volley, and like the spot serving. With De Minaur, it's like he is dragging every single last bit of talent he has from his body, and it's going to win him some titles and get him to ATP Tour finals and maybe a run at Wimbledon to a semi-final or something. But it's not going to be enough. And that's exactly what we saw again. And it's fantastic. And if he's done anything over the last couple of years, it's not just put himself in that conference. He's even put a bit of breathing space between him and some of the chasing pack outside the top 10. So he is now, he's not necessarily closer to the absolute top, but he is now unbelievable. He's like, quarterfinals of a slam, pretty much,
Yeah, he's a shoo-in in that sense.
Yeah.
He's a guy that like most players are not going to want to come up against because they know it's going to be a very, very tough and annoying day at the office. But yeah, I mean, there's one thing I'll say, but like I don't have expertise in it, and it's also maybe spending too much time looking at tweets and whatnot. But some people talk about kind of like his arm angle for the forehand and whatnot, and how it's just like maybe doesn't allow the necessary racket head speed and whatnot to just really like get the the miles per hour up there and compete with those top two guys, because the technique just doesn't allow for it. But whatever, who's to say? A great tennis player, such an amazing competitor. But I guess we're not having like a crazy conversation, because we could say this about anyone from 5 to 15, all very good tennis players. There's a large gap between the top two.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's probably the least to talk about with him, because there's stuff with the other players. There's calendar slam conversations. There's 7, career Grand Slams. There's Djokovic pursuit of 25. There's the two narratives with Zverev and Sinner or Zverev and Shelton and some of the. But with him, there is no narrative that hasn't been. And he did exactly what we expected. He neither underachieved nor overachieved in the tournament in terms of where we thought he'd get. So therefore, the conversation on him is like, that's Alex De Minaur, and we'll see you again many more times throughout 2026 and beyond. Just a quick off the cuff moment here. There's an interesting couple of quotes that have emerged from Alcaraz in the Spanish newspaper El Mundo regarding Juan Carlos Ferrero and the split that they had, and some of the hate mail that I think he seems to have got, probably more on social media, I should say, than the mail. And it's just a quote here from Alcaraz, which is, "Time has helped me understand the power of words and how they can influence a person's state of mind. Sticks and stones and all that stuff." That's my words, by the way. He's not saying sticks and stones. That would be very funny if he did, or at least the Spanish equivalent. I had some doubts after reading negative comments following the decision to end my partnership with Ferrero. Don't deny my past, but I don't get stuck in it either. Okay, very interesting indeed. Little side moment there. And yeah, Lone Etienne, let's finish on him. because I think we can also just touch on Medvedev, because I think those two are permanently entwined at the moment. Now if we're with lots of these players such as Zverev and Shelton anyway in particular, and maybe De Minaur as well, we're not quite sure if they're positive or negatives or how to frame it. I think we can firmly put him in the positive, right, for the quarterfinal run he had.
Oh yeah, that's been awesome. I mean, for his ATP Tour career, I would say it's all positive, and it's surpassed kind of everything I expected. I watched him a little bit on the Challenger Tour. He would just tear up everyone, but that was because he never missed a ball, and guys didn't really know what to do. Now it's just like there's tennis IQ. There's adding aggression. There's adding different heights on the forehand. The backhand gets through the court. A little bit of an aspect of coming to the net. I mean, he's putting all the pieces together, and it's
some
really
good attacking tennis sometimes as well in the wins over Borges and Medvedev.
Yeah, I mean, Borges I thought would be a tough kind of marathon-esque battle.
Borges served the first set, but I mean, I still think Tien comes through that one way or another because he played so well after going 5-3 down. But yeah,
so yeah, I very, very positive showing in Australia, and he seems to enjoy it here.
Yeah, he does. So he's getting better and better, and I think a top 20 spot is happening at some point this year. I know you know about my doubts about Tien on the clay, but I think he's so good elsewhere. I think he's if the whole season was a hard court season, he'd be easily top 20. But I think if it doesn't happen this year, I think it has to happen at sometimes. Oh, he's actually 24 in the world right now anyway. So if he just stays on a hard court and he has a better spell from now until the clay season than he had last year, because he didn't do great in the Sunshine Double last year from memory. It wasn't really until the Asian swing, really. And then that obviously that title he won against Cam Noy. Where was that? He won Metz, was it maybe?
Something like correct. That. Yeah, from 5-1 down in the third set tiebreak.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he's actually 24 in the world right now. And if he performs to his level, and players such as Lehetska, injury prone, who's just, a couple of 100 points in front of him. Tommy Paul is still not 100%, I don't think, although I do expect him to get back on the horse pretty quickly and be there or thereabouts. Rune, of course, is not going to be playing. These are all players that are within 1,000 points of him anyway. So Rune is 700-800 points ahead of him. Mensik as well is injured again now. Yeah, so there's a lot of players either, as I say, with a few spots in front of him that suggest, I think Rublev is 900 points in front of him. So we'll leave Rublev and above. But basically, Davidovich Fokina is 800 points in front. Mensik is not going to be playing for a few weeks, I don't think. Rune is not going to be playing for 6 months or more. So I'd imagine that at some point he'll go past Rune. Yeah, he'll be top 20, I think, by Miami.
Yeah.
Especially if the draw in Miami is decent, as in I think he lost to João Fonseca second round last year. I'm going to say might even been first round, but I mean we've got a great spell for him in the next. We've got 2 different court speeds there with Indian Wells and Miami. One of those 2, I don't know which one, but one of those 2 should suit Lerner. I'm guessing he's playing Acapulco, which I think he had some good results at last year, so he'll have to sort of defend those. Obviously, a win over Zverev there. That, of course, over Zverev was touched upon ahead of their match, but actually him losing in 4 sets in a Grand Slam quarterfinal, best of 5, that's fine. This is a great question here, and I think we could end on this one. And Medvedev, by the way, yeah, I thought he'd lose to Tien, and he did. Partly because of what I'd seen at the Australian Open in the previous 3 rounds as well, where Medvedev had not looked great against Manajan, for example. And Medvedev is still going to have a better year this year than last year, and it might see him get back inside the top 10. So I think that could be a step forward. But he looked lost against Lerner, and that's largely because Lerner was so good. What will Tien struggle with most in terms of relegating game? Well, as big as I am on his serve, making the improvements I've suggested, I think it's still probably that, because he's got the athleticism, he's got the shot tolerance, he's got some weapons. The return is not bad. Some shots down the line, I recall. He's obviously a lefty. Yes, so he's got a lot to elevate that game to a. I think he could be top 10 one day. I'm just not going top 10 this year. No, you don't think top 10?
No, I think there's some potential there. It's just like putting a calendar year together, as you mentioned in your conversation with Amy. It's just like, okay, what happens in the clay? What happens during the grass season? Like, how can we put it all together? Because, from April until late July, August, Washington. Yeah, you won't see a hard court. And so that's just new territory that most Americans coming up the ranks are going to have to deal with, kind of that transition. And then, as players, I feel like in our era are just continuing to get more aggressive. Can he implement some of that into his game? Like you said, transitioning to the net as well is like important. So yeah, it's just about like putting it all together. In terms of like his build, it's an interesting one. Like he's not the biggest guy. Maybe not. We don't see it like strength wise, not like muscles popping out anywhere, but very smart player. I would put him up in my tennis IQ top guys, which, that's a different way to elevate yourself in a sense. So yeah, I'd say like putting it all together, becoming more physically fit. Yeah.
Big on Learner Tien. And I think a successful year for him, as long as he gets into the top 20 at some point, and wins another title. And that's another huge step forward for someone who's not going to be 21 until December. So he's going to be 20 throughout pretty much this entire tennis season. And so, yeah, another title somewhere inside the top 20, maybe a run at a Masters. He's already got the Slam run. Okay, you might now want to do another one. You might want to get to a quarterfinal of one of the other three. New York, maybe, where he did let himself a little bit down, I think, in that first round against Novak last year, just in terms of his performance. He's going to lose that match, probably, whatever happens, but his performance was really just not there against Novak for most of that match. So, maybe you could say, he wants to get to another second week somewhere. And I think in his career, I think grass will be okay. I think it'll be okay. I think he's already shown enough in Mallorca last year. I know Mallorca is different to the lush grass of Wimbledon, but he won't get the same level of results as he will do on a hard court, but it'll also be better. A bit like Alex Ayala, that he'll get his grass elevates his serve another notch, and it already has gone up a notch in my opinion over the last 12 months, but it elevates it another notch. His return comes to the fore a bit. His movement as well on grass is better than it is on clay, for example. He'll get some results. This is not me saying he's winning Wimbledon, but he'll get some decent results. It won't be the same as the clay. It won't be the way we go, the clay season's here. He'll be pleased to get on the grass, I think, every year.
But who knows? Because I feel like there are a couple players in 2025 who I'm like, it's going to be a tough clay season, and then they impress me. One lefty in particular. So, I mean, we'll see.
Draper?
Sure. Shelton?
Oh, Shelton. Yeah. Shelton sometimes on clay does all right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I remember seeing Shelton up close at Estoril in 2024, I think it was. And that was, I think, might have been his first clay season. I think, certainly,
might have been early. I think it was 23, maybe, but
23. So it was 23. I saw him. Yeah, 23.
Yeah,
and that was like, he's never been to Europe before, which stunned me considering his father was a professional tennis player. But Draper's the one for me. You mentioned a lefty who's done well on the clay. That's sort of maybe just because of our stereotypes with British players in particular, kind of caught us all a bit by surprise. But fingers crossed he can get healthy and hold on to his sort of top 10 spot, and fingers crossed he plays. I think he's scheduled to play Davis Cup this week. So
I saw some training, but I was going to ask you the same thing actually.
I think it was James who told me, like I said, when's he back, and he said Davis Cup, which is towards the end of this upcoming week. There are tournaments coming up this week, and there are Davis Cup things going on this week, and you might be going, where are our previews? Well, this is an Australian Open thing that we've already done an hour and 25 minutes on, so I think we'll bring it to an end there. But we'll have lots of coverage of all the tennis tournaments going on across the world this week from wherever the men will be playing some European indoors, I guess, this week. I think Montpellier is among them, as well as Davis Cup and so on and so forth. All right. Thanks for joining me today, Brenna.
Thanks for having me, John.
If you're listening to us as a podcast, wonderful. Thank you very much. Do give us a rating, by the way, on the podcast, and make sure it's a 5. If you're planning on giving us a rating of 1 or even 2 or 3, just don't. Don't worry about it. We don't need the rating. It's fine. If you're planning on giving us a 5, do that. Yeah. Okay. Great. Everyone else on YouTube in particular, you know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.